Hello folks and welcome to F1 Live, your post-race show coming to you live and direct from the paddock here at the Sochi Autodrome. Will Buxton with you as always, delighted to be joined by Danny Kvyat. And Danny, what a crazy race, what an amazing result here in Sochi. Lewis Hamilton continues Mercedes' run of victories. It's 100 Formula One victories for Lewis Hamilton, but it was an amazing day, a crazy race with that rain at the end, which just played into Lewis's hands after Lando Norris really had dominated proceedings.
Yes, well, indeed, very exciting race. I think there was a lot of action, especially with that rain in the end. It made things confusing in a way that, no one was understanding anymore what was going on. And it was very well managed by Mercedes in those situations, kept their cool and won the race. So yeah, very, very big number, 100 race wins. I think it's quite incredible.
It really is incredible. And the decision today, apparently all Lewis Hamiltons to pit when it started to rain. That decision ultimately is what brought him, I should say, the race win today. Let's take a look then at your classified results at the end of the Russian Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton, 100 Formula One Grand Prix victory. Behind him in second place, Max Verstappen from last on the grid. Carlos Sainz came home a brilliant third for Ferrari, having fought for the lead with Lando Norris in the early part of the Grand Prix. In P4, it was Daniel Ricciardo who had a very up and down day. Valtteri Bottas, P5. Then Fernando Alonso in 6th. Lando Norris ultimately P7. Kimi Raikkonen up in the points in 8th. Then Perez and George Russell once again in the points in 10th. Fourth time in the last 5 races for George Russell. Behind them, the Aston Martin duo of Lance Stroll and Sebastian Vettel, who made contact towards the end of the Grand Prix. Then Pierre Gasly, who will be disappointed with 13th. Esteban Ocon in 14th. Charles Leclerc 15th. Giovinazzi 16th. Yuki Tsunoda P17. Nikita Mazepin P18. Nicholas Latifi 19th. And Mick Schumacher, the only real DNF of the day and not classified at the end of the Grand Prix. Danny, I don't know who was more impressive today, if it was Lewis Hamilton taking that Grand Prix victory, or if it was Max Verstappen fighting through from 20th and last place to take a P2 on the podium, on a day when he needed a real sort of race of salvation to try and cling on to as many points as he could in the championship.
Yes, I think both very controlled drives. Of course, the rain then in the end actually played in both favors. Both made the best use of it, and this is when those were the calls in which you can lose or gain many places, and we've seen both of them making the right call.
The wrong call today was that made by Lando Norris and McLaren. It was about 6 laps to go to the checkered flag, and the rain started to fall, but not all over the circuit, in different sectors. Lando opting to stay out, Lewis opting to come in and pit. When you're in the cockpit and the rain starts to fall, how tough is it to make that decision and make the right decision at the right time?
It's quite tough. I mean, it's always best probably to go with the conditions and don't try to anticipate the weather too much, because you never know in that position what's going to happen, especially with the microclimate here as it is. And it's very difficult to really make the right choice. Sometimes it's easier to be in a hunting position there, like Lewis was, and sometimes it probably was easier to make that choice.
Now, one driver, as we've already said, who had an amazing day today, Max Verstappen, coming through from P20 to P2. Christian, you got to be so happy with your man today. He needed to salvage as many points as he could. Not only did he do that, he finished on the podium. A great race and a great result.
Yeah, no, look, to take the penalty here to finish, P2, especially with 6-7 laps to go, it looked like it was going to be a P6 probably. So no, I think Max made the call at the right time. He judged the crossover right to go on to the Inter, and to bring it home second. Only give away 7 points, so 2 points behind with the engine penalty in the bag. That's a good day's work.
Could you have ever foreseen that this would be the outcome from this weekend, taking that engine penalty as you did starting from P20?
No, look, we thought to be in the top 5 would be the optimal at a circuit that we felt that was, it was game on for Mercedes to win. So it's been historically a very strong circuit for them. So and I have to say congrats to Lewis on an unbelievable century of victories. So, for us, P2, that's really very positive. To leave here, just 2 points in it, it's nothing.
I need to ask you, there was one point in the race that led to Lewis gaining the lead of the Grand Prix. Coming in for the pit stops, Daniel Ricciardo ahead of him at the time. The Mercedes guys came out into the pit lane. McLaren pitted, Mercedes went back into the garage. Did you see anything untoward in that at all?
No, I don't think so. It looked like a dummy or a reaction, so I think that's just a bit of gamesmanship, but so I can't see an issue with that.
Moving on then to the races that remain for this season. This weekend went better than you could possibly have expected. We move on to Turkey next. Your expectations for that for your team?
Well, to be honest with you, the remaining 7 races, we've got our 2 bogey circuits out the way, and Monza we came out all right of. Okay, we didn't have the main race there, but Mercedes obviously conceded points there. And we've come out of this race on the podium, so 7 to go. Everyone's going to be a cup final. This is going to go all the way to wire. I've got no doubt we're going to be in Abu Dhabi talking about the outcome of that race.
Lovely stuff. Good to see you smiling. Thanks for coming on the show, Christian. As you said, Max just drove a brilliant race today to bring it home in P2, and good to know that Christian doesn't believe there was anything too untoward there. What we were talking about was in the race for the win. Lando was leading. Daniel Ricciardo found himself in that P2. Lewis couldn't get past Daniel Ricciardo in the race. Ultimately, McLaren sticking to their guns, sticking to their strategy. But when Mercedes came out into the pits, McLaren immediately responded, brought in Daniel Ricciardo, then Mercedes stepped down. To the letter of the regulation, that is a little sketchy, a little bit of gamesmanship, but as Christian said there, nothing that he believes was too untoward about it.
Yes, it's very hard to know exactly what's inside someone's mind. Sometimes you might also just change your mind in the last moment, and but yeah, it could be some sort of games. But if it worked, then it worked quite well. So it's if something it was good then, because if they responded on that, it means that the thing worked.
Yeah, absolutely. The article 28.12 in the sporting regulation says you are only allowed in the pit lane immediately before you're allowed to work on the car. But of course, as you say, you can change your mind at the last minute and pull back into the garage. I want to talk about Carlos Sainz, who had a great day today, finishing 3rd and on the podium. But we'll talk about that in a little while. Pierre Gasly, though, has joined us on the show. Pierre, such a crazy race at the end there. So hard to even keep it on track. I know you got hit in those final laps as well, but a difficult day even with that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a quite eventful race. First stint keeping Bottas for I think 30 laps behind. Second stint we were right behind in the medium, and it was okay. We were at the back, but it was looking good with the tires. I had Bottas and Kimi right in front, and they boxed for Inter tires. Finished P5 and P8, and decided to stay out on track. And unfortunately, it was the wrong call. So yeah, we lost quite a lot of points there, and yeah, that's unfortunate because I think we did a lot of mistakes this weekend, and we didn't deserve to score points.
Is this one of those races you've just got to put behind you and move on to the next?
No, I think we need to understand, because I know, the level of the guys. I know the level of the team. I think which got better this season. They've performed very well, and clearly this weekend we've made way too many mistakes, and it's not what we have shown this year. So yeah, some work to do for us to get back to the level we've had earlier this season. Yeah.
Do you want to ask a question? No, he's good. Thanks for coming on the show, Pierre.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, man. As Pierre says then, a lot for AlphaTauri to learn after this weekend, a difficult weekend. As he said, just far too many mistakes out on track, both in qualifying and the race.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I didn't want to. He had a bad day, so
didn't want to make it any worse.
Days, yes, but it happens, it's normal, and I think sometimes. As a team, because I've been a part of it for a long time, it can be many races really, really good, and then in one race many things go wrong, but then they can put it behind them quite fast. So I think tonight there will be a lot of talk there for sure about what went wrong. France is always quite tough regarding that, and I'm sure there will be plenty of talk on tonight's briefing.
Are these days more important than the successful days, the days where it goes wrong, to learn so those mistakes don't happen again?
Yes, I think they've been running in points for many races in a row, and now it can be a bit more of a cold shower. It's important not to get stuck, turn the page from tomorrow, learn from it, and yeah, I think they can be back in shape already from the next weekend. They were anyway fast, so the car is still there, and they can bounce back. Yeah.
We were about to talk before Pierre came on the show about Carlos Sainz and the brilliant run that he had to the podium today. Obviously helped at the end with the rain, but he was leading the race at one point today and was looking fantastic in that Ferrari. A great weekend for Carlos.
Yes. I mean, Carlos is always, good in these changeable conditions. He was really good yesterday, really good again today. It's just a little bit clear also that they still have like a little bit of pace to fight there with maybe McLaren, because also, of course, Norris, when he was behind him directly, was very, very strong.
I want to talk about Fernando Alonso, your teammate, of course, who came home in a brilliant 6th place today. It's where he started the Grand Prix. But as he told us yesterday, he expected to fall down through the order in the race. He didn't. He fought brilliantly. Much deserved points on the board for him and Alpine.
Yes, it's true, but also I think if we talk with him later, he will say that maybe there was a chance for a podium. So maybe it was one lap. It was very tricky to make a right call when to go on inters, and I think it was so tough to judge. But anyway, it was a good amount of points, and he was really drove brilliantly again. And in the end, the team made right calls today.
They did indeed. Let's hear now then from the interview pen on what was a good day overall for Alpine.
So Fernando, you started P6, finished P6. Are you happy with that?
I have to be happy with the points, and I think it's a good place for the team and for the constructor points. But I think today we did a very good race. We had an amazing pace. We could keep up with Perez in the first 16, and after the pit stop we did overtake even Verstappen at one point. So the car was flying today, and I think we deserve more. When it started raining, we overtook Ricciardo, Perez and Sainz, and we were P3. So I really thought that the first podium was possible today, and on merits, not luck, just by pure pace. And then it started raining heavier. Some people stopped earlier, some people stopped late. I think Lando and myself, we lost a lot of places. Charles as well, Perez as well, and some people got very lucky, and they are up there in the podium.
And was the gamble just trying to stay out and see if you can make it to lap 53 on the slicks?
No, I think they took the gamble. Normally, you wait on the slicks until the conditions are not anymore suitable for that slick tire, and then you change tire. They changed tire when they're still okay for the slicks, but in the next 20 seconds, it started raining very heavy. I think you cannot predict that intensity of the rain, but they were struggling with the dry tires, and they gambled. It was a lucky day for sure, but I think we deserve more, but plenty of positives for the team. And as I said, the level of competitiveness that we saw today in the race, it was not seen so far in any other race. So we need to understand why and try to keep it forward for Turkey.
And on this most momentous of days, Lewis Hamilton, 100 Formula One Grand Prix victories. Toto Wolff joins us now. Toto, what a drive from Lewis to take win 100. It had to be called right, and ultimately, as I understand it, it was Lewis that made that call.
It was a tricky drive at the beginning. We didn't really make a lot of progress, and fair credit, it was the weather frog that made the call on the pit wall. Rich and the strategy team, they were adamant that the rain was coming, and he resisted a bit, but in the next lap he took it.
You had a great battle with McLaren throughout the day as well. Found it difficult to get through Daniel early on. Ultimately, that pit stop, Daniel coming in a little early, managed to help with all of that. Just how strong were McLaren today? Obviously, same engine as you guys, a good partner for you there, but a strong showing from them as well.
Yeah, we got help today because Ricciardo's slow stop obviously helped us in the whole thing. The start, he was pretty boxed in, so that wasn't great. So yeah, I think it's the 100th win. That's the most important today. But I think the weather god was with us today, and the strategy god.
And what a time for the Formula One World Championship as well. It's so tight between Max and Lewis. Obviously, Max finishing second wasn't the result that you guys wanted out of the race today, but for the fans, it keeps this thing ticking and moving into the final part of this season.
I think it wouldn't have made much difference whether Lewis finished second and Max, wherever he was, seventh. It would have probably been equal points, like between first and second. So yeah, you take it.
And just another word for Lewis, 100 Formula One victories is just an incredible record. It sounds insane to say it, triple figures for anybody in the history of this sport it is unbelievable. In terms of what you've seen out of Lewis, how long you've known him, in the midst of this championship fight, how good is Lewis? Does he keep getting better every weekend?
I mean, we talk about the 100th victory and it's going to be in the news for the next 24 hours, but I think the true achievement is only going to be visible in a few years. He's the record holder in those most important statistics on pole positions and podiums and race victories, and that's amazing, and that legacy, nobody can take that away from him.
And a quick word before you go on George Russell. Of course, your driver for next year alongside Lewis, a brilliant P3 on the grid, held his own in the opening part of that Grand Prix today and came home with points once again. That's 4 races in the last 5 he scored points. Yeah,
he was very strong and held it there on his own. Obviously over the race distance, maybe the car is not capable yet of doing the first 5-6, but great drive also.
Thanks for coming on the show, Toto. Appreciate it, as always. Good to hear from Toto Wolff there, as he says, Lewis Hamilton, 100 Grand Prix victories. It is something which we probably will only really appreciate in a few years' time, but you as a Grand Prix driver yourself know the difficulty of even making it to the podium to make a win. 100 is an insane number, isn't it?
Yes, it's true. It's true, of course. Of course, I looked some races where it looked in a way quite easy for him, of course. In the past, their dominance was so obvious, but it doesn't take away the credit, I think. This year, when the cars got closer, I think you could really see how much difference he can make sometimes, even when the car is not there. So it's all an incredible achievement, of course.
Really is, mate. We're going to put an umbrella up for now because the rain started falling down pretty heavily, and that's a good excuse to head back to the studio for a bit of a chat with Sam Collins, because we've been talking about Lewis Hamilton, of course, and that brilliant 100th Grand Prix victory, Sam. It really is starting to come down now. But, mate, he needed to get there. He had to get there the hard way. Talk to us about Lewis Hamilton's strategy in the Russian Grand Prix, mate.
Thanks, Phil. I hope you stay... Well, actually, I don't hope you stay dry. I don't mind if you get full wets. Doesn't matter to me. Normally, at this point in a race weekend, I start off looking at this screen, the tyre strategy screen. And the first thing that jumped out at me was just down here. Yuki Tsunoda, the only driver to use soft tyres in the race, did it for 1 lap, realised it was raining and it was a bad idea. But for me, the real interest in this race was the Mercedes strategy. What actually came out of this is not what anybody really expected. The two Mercedes were not where you're accustomed to seeing them on the grid. Lewis Hamilton starting a little way back, not on the front row, and Valtteri Bottas way back after that power unit change, nearly on the very back row of the grid. And from the race start, well, Lewis Hamilton started the race on the medium tyre, and Valtteri Bottas, he started likewise. He started on the opposite, on the hard tyre. And that was an interesting strategy from Mercedes. They were clearly going to try and go deep into the race with Bottas and hoping Hamilton could lead from the front. However, the race start did not go as planned for Hamilton. So he got dropped off the start line, he fell back through the field and then had to race through. So you can see he made a poor getaway and then just everybody came swamping past him on the left. Not done, he picked up a nice toe, moved to the right-hand side of the track and tried to get a run up to second position. But look, there was no space. There was a McLaren in the way, there was a Ferrari and an Aston Martin. He played it safe, didn't want to get damaged, backed out of it, but lost loads and loads of places as a result. And then, because Hamilton found himself locked in this battle with the McLarens, that's not where he expected to find himself. But fighting with McLaren, that's a new experience for Mercedes, really. But they knew how to have that battle. They knew all the tricks. And coming up to the pit stops, Hamilton was fighting with Daniel Ricciardo. He was thinking, could he go for an undercut? Could he get in and out of the pits, come out in front of Ricciardo and get the position that way? Well, first of all, McLaren reacted and came out with their tyres for Ricciardo. He came in, he was going to take that hard tyre and go to the end of the race on those, they thought. Lewis Hamilton, the Mercedes team, saw this. They were going to react. And then they just decided. But the McLaren stop was a disaster. Mercedes didn't know that was going to happen. But at the same time, the Mercedes team ran out of the garage, got their tyres ready, and then ran back in. Now, a few people saying, why you're allowed to do that, why you're allowed to try and trick another team into do it. And actually, the issue would be that you're allowed to come out if you intend to make a pit stop. You're not allowed to just try and trick. You're not allowed to do gamesmanship, as Christian Horner called it. That wouldn't be allowed. But it was clearly Mercedes saying, if the McLaren stopped, then you don't come in. If McLaren doesn't stop, we're coming in trying to go for the undercut. McLaren covered it off. Then they went and carried on towards the end of the race. And then that battle with McLaren became a battle with Lando Norris as the race went on. And as the rain started to fall, the battle really got exciting. A question I was asked on hashtag F1 Live is, if the rain hadn't started, would Hamilton have been able to beat Norris? Well, we simply won't ever find that out. The data said it was dead heating between the two. So Lewis Hamilton got right up the field and tried to work it through. But then the rain came down super hard. They all came in at the end of the race. Lewis Hamilton made the right decision to come in and go on to the intermediates. Lando Norris got it wrong in the McLaren. He went on, he stayed out too long on the slicks, and that cost him the race ultimately. And Will, back to you, because that for McLaren, that really was a disastrous final few laps, wasn't it?
It really was, but it shouldn't take away from what was a brilliant race for the team. Andreas Seidel joins us now. I'm delighted to have him here. Andreas, Sam was just talking about that first stop, a long stop for Daniel Ricciardo. Ultimately, was the intention always to pit Daniel on that lap, or was it a reaction to Mercedes coming out in the pit lane?
No, it was a strategic call, because I think we saw a window to pit into. And that's why we pitted at that lap with Daniel.
Finally, well, not finally, but ultimately, I want to bring obviously on to Lando's wonderful race. It was almost perfect, and it was just that bit at the end. I mean, you can't do anything about the weather, and hindsight is always 20/20. But how difficult was that decision on the pit wall to leave him out?
I agree. It was a great weekend for Lando until the last 3 laps. But yeah, it was a tricky decision to make. In the end, we wanted to go for the win. Lando as well, and that's why we made the call together with him to stay out. In hindsight, it was the wrong call, so as always, we need to look into it and see what we can learn from it and see if we can do anything different next time. But it's part of the sport. I think it's also important to, especially after a disappointment like now, to look also on all the positives from this weekend. Have a good sleep tonight and reset tomorrow morning and go again.
This is it, man, because I know that the disappointment will be fresh and it will hurt. But the positives, not just from this race, but from this season, the fact Lando could have been on pole position 4 times this year quite easily, the fact that you had the pace easily to lead the race today as you did. You won in Monza on merit. The fact that everything is moving in the right direction for McLaren must leave you with so much positivity despite the obvious heartache today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The good thing for me is, independent of the individual results, to clearly see we made another step forward with the team this year, with the car, with the way how we work together, with our drivers as well. And that's key in order to go back to the front in Formula 1 in some years. So I'm very happy that at specific tracks we can already challenge Red Bull and Mercedes occasionally at the moment. It is also clear that we are not in a position yet to do that at all kind of tracks with different track characteristics, ambient conditions and tyre selection. So we have a realistic picture where we are, but we have a clear plan of how we want to close these gaps in the next years. We just need to have a bit more time, despite all the ambition, and I'm sure we can make this happen.
And the fact that Daniel obviously had a difficult start to the season as Lando just walks down disconsolately behind. He's now over that quite clearly. The funk has gone. He's firing on all cylinders. Lando, who had never led more than 1 lap until today, is firing on all cylinders. The team just looks like it's moving in absolutely the right way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm very happy, despite the disappointment at the moment, with what happened on Lando's side, with the race Daniel could show today again, including the qualifying also yesterday. He had a great race today. Scored important points for him for our battle in the Constructors' Championship. We still could score more points than Ferrari, which is great. Again, I think we have everything in place. If you just look now at the end of the rest of this season on the team side with the car, with both drivers, to stay ahead of Ferrari in this Constructors' Championship, and that's what we will focus on this year.
Thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. All right. Great to hear from Andreas there. I think the rain might have stopped a little bit. I can put this down. Does it stop? it stopped. As he says, the team is moving in the right direction. Everything is in place for McLaren now, and really in that Grand Prix today, they looked comfortable in the lead. That's got to be the biggest takeaway for them.
Yes, you know, we were talking on Thursday, me and you, just about how Lando shouldn't really be disappointed about Monza because it would come. And I think today again it was so close, but it didn't come. But I think one day it's gonna happen. So I think McLaren been making a lot of progress, and they've been clearly over the last few years doing incredible progress, and it's great for them. You know, I think obviously tonight everyone will be extremely disappointed there. Well, it's again the ability of turning the page really fast from tomorrow on, and seeing the positives will be the key for them, because they have a pace, they have a car, and they can they're scoring a lot of points this year.
Seems amazing to think about it, that on the day that Lewis Hamilton takes his 100th Grand Prix victory, it might not be Lewis Hamilton that makes the headlines in tomorrow's papers. That will instead be Lando Norris, who until today had only led one lap in his Formula One career. As Danny said, his day is coming. He was phenomenal in the lead of this race, deserved to win it. Let's hear from him now on a day which should have been full of joy, and instead is full of tremendous disappointment.
Hi Lando.
Hello.
P7, obviously, could have been so much more. How are you feeling right now?
Not that happy. I could have won the race and I didn't, so I'm never going to be happy like this. But yeah, it's the way it is. It's the way it went. We made the decisions. I made the decisions that I made, and they were obviously wrong in the end of the day. So yeah, tough one. But on the positive side, I guess I got a couple points, and Daniel did a good job as well. So for the team, it was still a decent day.
And spent so much time resisting pressure from Lewis Hamilton. Do you think you'd have got to the end and got that victory if it had stayed dry?
For sure. I think everything was under control. Like I had to do quite a bit of fuel saving, and that's when he got quite close to me. But as soon as I stopped and I could push, then everything was fine. So yeah, you know, even the first like 4 or 5 laps when it started to drizzle, it was tricky, but I still had it under control. I made some mistakes, but I guess that's what happens when you're at least leading out of those two, you know, and if he's putting pressure on, you can't just drive slowly and let him pass. So it was tricky, but what we just, for some reason, didn't see was how much more rain was suddenly going to come. And I didn't get told that, I didn't know about that. And I made my decision on what we had before, the information that I got told, which was the drizzle was going to remain a drizzle, not pouring with rain. So yeah, I don't know. It just was all going so well, so I guess it makes it feel even worse. But not the result we wanted in the end.
Tough one. Thank you very much.
That is a very disappointed young man in Lando Norris. Danny, you have been in this position before. Folks at home, we can't understand what it feels like to be on slick tyres when it starts to rain. And as we saw in the replays there with Lando, you hit the brakes and you just slide. How powerless are you in those kind of moments to do anything about it?
Yes, I mean, those moments when there is slick tires on a fully wet track, you're just a passenger, really. There is so much aquaplaning, so little grip. Whatever speed you're gonna go, you're gonna lose the car. So it's already amazing that he didn't really crash there. And yeah, so I think there's nothing he could have done.
It looks like, for us normal people, when we hit sort of ice on the road and you lose it. Is it like that? Is it like hitting ice and there's nothing you can really do to get that traction, to get that grip to slow you down?
Yes, that's absolutely that kind of feeling, and it's just that it's called aquaplaning, and yeah, you just don't have anything, no more grip, and you need to go really slow. It's a very difficult situation, and every moment you can lose the car, you can spin in a straight line, and you can crash, you know, and that's it. That's the end of the day, and it's the most difficult conditions that could ever be today.
Crazy. Difficult conditions as well, of course, as you said, for everybody out there, but in particular for the Aston Martin drivers who found themselves actually in a pretty good spot today. Lance Stroll had a great Grand Prix. At the start, making his way past Lewis Hamilton, fighting for a really good top 10 position. Could potentially have fought his way onto the podium today, but contact between himself and his teammate Sebastian Vettel towards the end of the Grand Prix, costing both a shot, not just at the podium, but at the top 10. No points on the board for Aston Martin. Let's hear from their drivers right now.
Lance, it looked like a difficult final third to your race. What was going on? Because we saw contact with Sebastian, contact with Pierre.
Yeah, it was tricky. Shame we didn't pick up points today.
But such a great start from you as well. It looked at one point like you were going to lead going into turn one.
Yeah, I don't think we were going to lead going into turn one, but it was a good start.
Okay, and are you slightly frustrated not to take more points?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. Thank you, Lance. Good luck.
No, in the end we were gambling on the wrong option to stay out with the dries, and we were not the only ones, but it hurt us in the end. So initially the rain was coming, but it wasn't coming a lot, and it looked like we were doing the right thing. But then when it came a lot more intense and there was spray and standing water, then obviously there was no chance to stay on track or to stay with the slicks.
Yeah, how tricky was it out there at the back?
Well, very slippery. You lose tire temperature, and obviously you have no profile to get rid of the water. So yeah, it was very, very slow, and we had a very slow lap, the whole lap, not just a couple of corners, which was very costly.
And we had a little touch with Lance. What was happening there?
Well, I guess it was a misunderstanding. I'm not sure. I don't think he saw me, so maybe he didn't expect me either. But fortunately, nothing happened. But unfortunately, we both are out of the points after the end.
Good to hear from the Aston Martin drivers. And for more on exactly what happened between those two in the closing laps, let's head back to F1 HQ and to Sam. My friend, you have been looking at those last few laps. It was all looking so good for Aston Martin, mate, until it wasn't.
Well, a lot of crestfallen faces down there for you, Will. And somebody who we just saw, Lando Norris, whose face looked pretty low, could be about to get lower. He's been summoned to race control over the pit entry. So he lost control, went outside the white line and then still came into the pits. You're not really allowed to do this. So he just lost grip, came out onto the track again, then rejoined the pits. The last time we saw this was Lewis Hamilton at Hockenheim a couple of years back. He got a penalty for it. Will Lando Norris's position be under threat? Well, we'll wait and see what the stewards have to say about that. But the stewards are also very interested in talking to another crestfallen face that you just heard from, Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. And as we saw, when the rain started, things started to get a bit spicy between both of those green cars, and they bumped into one another on the way around the track. That's not the incident that race control have particularly drawn their attention to. Instead, while there was this fantastic battle between the two Aston Martins, it's actually the incident between Lance Stroll and Pierre Gasly that came a little bit later that race control want to have a word with the Canadian driver about. Pierre Gasly was basically driven into by Lance Stroll, and that is being deemed to be causing a collision. There it is. And that means that, well, maybe Lance Stroll could have a little bit of a penalty coming as well. But in those wet conditions, the drivers are able to justify what they did and their decisions and their driving to race control. It probably would have been safer for Lando Norris to pit and go onto the correct tyres, and it would probably have been safer for Aston Martin to pit a lot sooner in general. So, Will, lots more to discuss, and I think that's not the last we're going to hear from race control. Back to you.
No, interestingly, I just saw Lance and Pierre leaving race control, and they weren't punching each other's lights out, so I think it was fairly cordial between those two coming down. Interesting with Lando coming into the pit lane. He was on the inside of the bollard, and usually you have to be on the inside of the bollard, don't you? He was inside, but then ran deep and through. So it's going to be interesting to see what the stewards make of that. But if we had a little replay here, actually, we can have a little look and see what's what. Here we go. So there's the bollard on the left, and there's a bollard there on the left as well. And he manages to get inside of both of those, and then...
Yeah, I think in regulation it says unless the conditions are too extreme, or unless there was a strong reason for you to miss that, you can still come back. I think it was more dangerous for him to continue another lap on slicks in those conditions than not pitting, you know. But yeah, I don't know. It looks like infringement, but I think there are too many conditions that were there on the side.
It's pretty crazy. The rain has completely stopped. now, and it's actually feeling a little warm. Such is the way the weather has come and gone throughout this weekend, completely and utterly dry. Let's hear now from your top three at the end of an absolutely enthralling day and a crazy race. Of course, it was Lewis Hamilton, your race winner, Max Verstappen in P2. Let's hear first, though, from Carlos Sainz, who came home a wonderful third for Ferrari.
So, Carlos started P2, finished P3. Is this a happy podium or is this a slightly frustrated podium?
It's mainly happy, but I think as a team, we just need to, as Ferrari, we need to keep analyzing and keep seeing what we can do better with tires, with fuel, with a bit the top speed to make sure that the next time a Ferrari is leading the Grand Prix, we are not get overtaken so easy as it happened today. But in general, today was I think a very strong race. We did a perfect start, risked it around the outside on Lando. We did a very good steam management on the hard behind the traffic, and then we managed to push. We were on course for a reasonably comfortable P3 before the rain came and made everything a lot trickier, but still managed to make it.
But you made the right decision to go on the Inters and you got that podium.
Yeah, we made exactly the right decision at the right time. Everyone who we were on the hards, it was super difficult to keep the car on track, while the people on mediums were reasonable. They had quite a bit more grip, and they were overtaking me, and with that softer tires, softer compound in these cold, rainy conditions, they were happier, but I was sliding all the way, nearly lost the car 2 or 3 times. So did the call to come in for Inters just to make sure we make it to the end, and it was the right call at the right time.
Max, well, there are recovery drives and there are recovery drives, and that was a pretty good one, huh?
Yeah, I mean, super happy, of course, to be second. If you would have told me this morning that I would become second today, then I wouldn't believe you. But yeah, luckily, the call, of course, to go from the slicks to the Inters was the perfect one. I think the right lap, and that gave me the positions also to keep the car on track, of course, because I got a few guys on my in lap. But yeah, super pleased with this.
And thinking about how today could have gone if you hadn't made so much progress, so important for the championship, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it could have, of course, been a lot worse in terms of how many points I would lose, and especially also with the whole conditions, like it's already very hard to pass, but also today, because of track conditions or whatever, the tires were graining a lot, so you also couldn't really push or stay close to someone. And then all in all, of course, to come away with second here was, for us, at least very important.
One slightly worrying moment getting passed by Alonso, but you sort of quickly sorted that out.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was on fresh tires and my tires were grained, so I couldn't really do a lot. So I just tried to follow him, and then, of course, I didn't know at that time what was all going to unfold to the end, but we stayed calm and stayed focused, and we made the right choices.
Congratulations. Lewis Hamilton, 100 Grand Prix wins. It makes my head hurt a bit. How does that feel?
Too. It's a lot of racing. It's incredible. Firstly, I just have to say a big thank you to my team, because without them, I mean, even today, fantastic on the pit stops, amazing with strategy and just continuing to not give up in this incredibly tight battle. And I was really grateful for them just continuing to push. It's taken a long time just to get that one win. Of course, our competitors are super fast, as you can see, but nonetheless, I'm really grateful.
Yeah, and what a way to earn it, because you were hunting down.
I was hunting
Lando.
and hunting. I was pushing so hard. I had a difficult day yesterday, so I was like, I've got to redeem myself somehow, flat out. And at the beginning, I was nearly in the lead. I was quite far up into turn 1, but then I had to bail out, and I lost so much ground to everyone. But anyways, I worked my way back, and yeah, it's a great feeling. I'm just glad that I brought it home.
Massive congratulations.
Thank you.
We're just watching that Lewis Hamilton interview. And as you said, Danny, we're really starting to appreciate this year, if we didn't already, just how good Lewis Hamilton is. It's days like this where he has to fight through, that it's not handed to him on a plate, that actually just a sensational fighting, battling drive to win this Grand Prix. A brilliant performance from Lewis Hamilton.
Yes, we've seen a few times this year how he can make a difference, with some calls and just with some driving. Sometimes when it seems like the pace is not there, and this year also, when you're stuck behind McLaren, I think you can't really overtake them anymore. And yeah, he really made some brilliant calls, and yeah, really some great moves.
Just when you think Lewis Hamilton can't get any better, he just puts in another sensational performance, and one like that to win his 100th Grand Prix. Absolutely astonishing. The result and the records state that Mercedes have never lost a race here. They've won every single Russian Grand Prix, even going back to before Formula One started, 1912 and 1913. They won those two as well. But that doesn't tell the full story of just how hard Lewis Hamilton had to work today, just what a virtuoso performance today's race was. Absolutely sensational from him. And as we said right at the top of the show, and as Toto confirmed, Lewis made the call for the tyres. It wasn't down to the team, it was down to Lewis. Made the right call at the right time.
It's true, but also yesterday it was close to becoming a big disaster day. It could have been all gone yesterday. But sometimes these fine margins, that's what decides the championship. And anyway, we can say he was lucky, but still, I think I still think that today's call was incredible. But yesterday, yeah, was a very difficult, from him.
It's Lewis Hamilton, though, who has taken his 100th win with a sensational race and a brilliant victory here today. Let's look at the championship standings then at the end of this Russian Grand Prix, because Lewis Hamilton has retaken the championship lead, 246.5 points, 2 points now ahead of Max Verstappen, with Valtteri Bottas in third, Lando Norris P4, and then Sergio Perez in fifth. Carlos Sainz back on the podium is sixth, ahead of Charles Leclerc. Daniel Ricciardo P8, Gasly ninth, and Fernando Alonso with a good haul of points today in 10th. Behind them in P11, it's Esteban Ocon, then Vettel and Stroll, Tsunoda and Russell again in the points today. 16 points now for George Russell, Nicholas Latifi on 7, then Raikkonen and Giovinazzi, Schumacher, Kubica and Nikita Mazepin. In the Constructors' Championship, well, the result today sees Mercedes now on 397.5 points. That is 33 ahead of Red Bull, so a good day for Mercedes. McLaren in third ahead of Ferrari, but it's still very close between those two. Then Alpine and AlphaTauri, Aston and Williams on 23 points. Alfa Romeo on 7 have it all to do in these final races. Williams looking very, very comfortable now in 8th place. Haas still yet to get on the board. Danny, it's been a great weekend here in Russia, even with the rain and the difficulties with practice cancelled and that amazing qualifying session, the brilliant race as well today. Would you say this has been the best Russian Grand Prix we've had here in Sochi?
I think so, yeah. I've been hearing some opinions that, of course, the races here in the past were quite not very entertaining, which can make sense. But today I think was extremely entertaining race. The weather played its role today, and yeah, we've seen some really interesting moments today. I hope everyone enjoyed.
And next up, it's Turkey. A wonderful track to drive on, an absolute thrill ride, a roller coaster over there. Who do we expect to shine in the next race?
It's interesting, yeah, it will be interesting to see how the track changed from last year, because I remember when I drove there last year, it was so slippery with the new tarmac. It was basically another way of driving, like nothing else. So if they race there, the track will become more classic, and I think we will see pretty much similar people at the front. But if the track hasn't changed or improved much, we could again see some surprises at the front.
Lovely stuff, man. Thank you so much, and thanks for everything this weekend. I've really enjoyed having you on all the shows. It's been great. Thank you, and we will see you in Turkey, and we will see you folks in Turkey as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Our thanks, of course, to Danny for his insight, to Greg Stewart, a rare appearance from Greg in the TV pen, asking all of the questions to all of the crew behind the scenes that you don't get to see, and of course our thanks to you, as always, for tuning in. This looked like it was going to be Lando Norris's day, and yet it came to Lewis Hamilton with a sensational drive in the most treacherous of conditions to notch up win number 100, and with it the World Championship lead. Roll on Turkey. This season just goes from strength to strength. We'll see you next time, folks.